Hey, it's Jason, and I had a project I wanted to show you, but for this one, I don't even need to drive anywhere. I'll just take you over to the neighbors right across the street. Peter.
Hey, good morning, Jason. How are you?
Doing great. How you doing today?
Very good, very good.
So here we are. Looks great. We installed a 12 by 20 pond and a 16 by 21 Techo block patio about a year ago, and wanted to come over and check it out.
I'm glad you stopped by because now right at this point in time, all of the bushes have filled in nicely and it's blended along the pond, and it just looks over the top.
Yeah, you've definitely done a great job taking care of it. So I can't wait to walk through how we built this. So let's talk about the construction of this. Started off with actually one day I was standing out front. He walked over and said, hey, I'm thinking about doing a pond and patio.
And you knew exactly what I had in mind because this is exactly what I had pictured in my mind. So it came out perfect when the patio, and then moving on to the pond, again, over the top.
Due to logistics, sometimes what we need to do is make sure that we build in the right order. You had to take off a big deck. You had a big deck here, that had to be removed.
Yeah, and you also understood the grading challenges along with the boulders, which then made this patio possible. So
it's on a pretty big slope here. So what we did is we brought some boulders in and put some boulders around the outside. And we used clean stone. It's basically a stone that goes in and it's compacted as it goes in. So the neat thing about using that is you can build up fairly quickly with that.
Yes.
Once the boulders go in, a bunch of stone goes in, and it brings the patio up level for us, which allowed us to have the flat surface that we were gonna need. It was time to start putting the patio in, but before that, you had some deck work to do.
Yeah, we needed to orientate, and you needed to know the grading as far as where that deck and how big that deck was going to be. So it worked out perfectly. It really showcases the patio. I didn't want to go too big, so.
This is a Techo block blue 60 patio with an Antica border. So it's kind of squares and rectangles through the middle, but I really liked how it broke it up around the outside with the Antica border. Knowing that the pond was gonna go in, I feel like that those two really go hand in hand nicely. And it's a sandalwood color, which really blends into the house, the gray of the deck, the earth tones of all the rocks and the boulders and the gravel. So I was really happy with how the patio came out. And you had said before we got here, we recommended a minimum of a 16-foot by 16-foot patio. And the reason that I typically recommend going at least that is because it allows you to put a table and chair in and be able to walk all the way around the outside without feeling like you're gonna fall off the edge.
And from the other side, the rocks, and it all looks natural to the landscape, which is key to complementing the home.
Another neat element on the opposite side of the patio from the pond is this stone fountain. And this stone fountain came from Aquascape. So we had this as an auction item at the pond tour.
Yes, and my wife and I bid on it, and we were the winning bidders. And once we had it, we consulted you with how this should be placed, where it should be placed, and you recommended the Aquascape basin in order to provide the water source for the fountain, and that has worked out perfectly alongst the edge of the patio here.
So when we were building for the patio, we excavated out an area that was 4 feet by 4 feet by 16 inches deep, and that is where the aqua basin goes. And they're just a really neat element. It's a totally different sound than what you get off of a pond and a waterfall. And then you topped it off with these elephant ears. These things are awesome.
Yeah, the elephant ears have done quite well in this particular area with the mulch and with the water dripping off the ears. The two accent each other really well.
We really like patios. They're awesome. But once the patio was done, there was still one more step, which is always my favorite part, and that's the pond. You actually were at the pond tour and bought an 8x11 pond kit there, which was awesome. It was part of the charity. However,
there was always a theme to most of all your videos regarding ponds, and most of your customers would always say, I wish I had gone bigger. So I conveyed that information to Jason and said, let's go bigger and do it right the first time and put in the wow factor, and here's what we have behind us. So couldn't be more happy, my wife and I.
So the 8x11 was out, the 12x20 was coming in. And we came over one day, actually a bunch of kids were here. We were having a good time with the kids, working at the neighbors. I love working with the kids. You have a son the same age as my kids. They were all out here and we started digging the pond. And a little bit tough to tell now, but there was a pretty good slope coming down into here and there was a lot of dirt coming out.
Oh yes, oh yes.
Once we dug out the pond and got close to the shape that we wanted, we went and we put a fabric in. And after the fabric, we put the liner in. And after the liner, that's when we started putting some rocks and boulders in.
And that's where the artistry of your expertise of picking rocks. You would think a rock is a rock. Your placement of rocks and how they coincide to the next one, to the next one, to the next one, it certainly shows now.
Yeah, you get this big pile of rock, and we always like to say, no, that's the fun part. That's where you get to try it and make art happen. And you have these big piles, and you start selecting and picking, and you're bringing that one in. But as you're placing that one rock, it's not that one rock that, I mean, yeah, you're thinking about that one rock, but it's also the next 2 or 3 or 5 that need to tie into that to make everything flow nicely.
And there was many times when you went back to the rock pile and picked a different rock and said, this is the one that goes there.
Yeah.
So it wasn't always a pick up a rock, drop it in place. There was a certain eye that Jason has about setting your rocks in the right place.
Yes,
so.
We got all the rocks in, and then we covered everything up with gravel. We did put a fish cave in.
Yep.
For the fish to hide. You got some awesome looking fish. There's some couple big guys in here now.
They eat well each and every day.
So once the pond was constructed, that's where it really gets fun and interesting. Now it's time to start building your streams and your waterfalls. And we started at the bottom and started working our way to the top. So we had the pond liner in for the most part, maybe not quite all the boulders there, but quite a few of them. And we start excavating out and building this area up and compacting it. And then we put our pond liner in, and it's time to start building waterfalls. And at each waterfall, we went and we would set a rock and then foam the back of it to make sure that water runs over the top. And also keep in mind our elevations to make sure that we had enough fall. Yes, we got our waterfalls that have our water falling and with a ton of sound, but we also have another flat rock that's allowing the water to just kind of come across, swirl just a little bit, and dump over the top. So that was really exciting. And then when you start to be able to split some waterfalls and you get a piece of wood going across the top, it was just a lot of fun. And that's where you just can't wait to plug it in. By the time you get up to about this point, it's like...
You want to see some water starting to float. You want to hear the audible noise of that water moving and get an idea of it coming to life. So,
yeah, we weren't quite there yet. You know, we just had to keep going. We still had another waterfall to build and a wetland to construct. So we got roughly a 4x10 constructed wetland. We fill that up with aqua blocks. We have a snorkel and centipede down in the bottom. That gives us the clean out port there. And then from there, we are able to put gravel on top and plants on top of that. And that's how they're constructed. Once that's built, then we get to finish it off by putting a couple rocks in front and finalizing that waterfall. Then it was time for landscaping. So we sent Julie and Becky out to take a look. And tell me how that went, because I actually wasn't here for that part.
Well, they had made a recommendation of a different variety of plants and ground cover. And it was in the fall, so it was kind of difficult to visualize the colors and how these plants would grow, not knowing the different types of flowers and shrubs that were going to be placed. We waited patiently over the winter for spring to come so we could see the colors and the flowers pop.
Yep.
And it's constantly evolving and it's constantly getting better. I mean,
yeah, and it's definitely important. You get your plants that blend in and give you color and soften things, and then you got your other ones like your maples and your blue atlas cedars, and some of your aquatics like your elephant ears that'll just really make things pop. And that's a really important process because we want to make sure that you got some year-round interest, and it looks good in the wintertime, but it also gives you those wow elements in the spring and summer and in the fall when everything else is full. So this was a really fun build, and I really appreciate you letting us show it off.
Turned out amazing. The wow factor is even more when it's in your own backyard and you get to enjoy it. as my neighbor, I'll always yell across the street and continue to say thank you for such a masterpiece of adding beauty to the home. So thank you again, Jason. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Thank you for checking out this video. If you have any questions, please put it in the comments below. Please remember to like and subscribe. Until next time, keep building your outdoor dreams.